Hello everyone, welcome to ChessVisor. In today's video, I'm going to show you another interesting game from Tata Steel Rapid and Blitz, and this is the round number 3. It was played between Abdusattorov, Nodirbek and Pragg. So the game starts with the 1c4. He goes for the English opening basically. So the game eventually, transposed or converted into the 4 knights variation of the English opening. So knight c3, e5, and then knight f3, knight c6, and then pawn g3 is trying to fink out of the bishop. Pawn to d5 strikes in the center. After c takes d5, knight takes d5, we have bishop to g2. And then Pragg plays bishop c5. In this position, if you're thinking about trading the piece, that is not going to really help you. Rather, it is going to help white. After bc3, white is going to have a huge center, and also, since the bishop has been, flanked out already, rook b1 after pawn b6, then the bishop will become a monster on this diagonal. So bishop to c5, and then both side castles on the king side. Pawn to d3, pawn h6, knight takes d5 was played, and then queen takes d5. It looks like Abdusattorov traded the piece and helped, Pragg, and Pragg has centralized his queen, right? But now comes the point. So a3. Now he is actually preparing to push forward with the b4 and trying to maybe fence out of the second bishop on the b2 square. So he plays a5 to stopping that idea. Bishop to d2 adds more pressure to that point actually, and now he plays queen e6. It's just trying to get out of this discovery, but there was no discovery available, or a good discovery available for the bishop. So queen e6, and then rook c1, and then queen went to e7 to protect the bishop, and then bishop to c3. As you can see, now the bishop post has been improved, and now he is putting pressure on e5. Sometimes we could expect some tactics on e5 square, but now he plays a4. So now the b4 is out of the question now for forever, because if you do that, then there is an en passant. So now comes knight to d2, opening up the bishop's diagonal, and the knight is actually rerouting itself to the c4 square. And also in some cases the knight wants to land on b3, so that needs to be covered, right? So he plays knight to d2 as a prophylactic move, I guess. So rook to d8, another prophylactic move. Queen c2, getting out of this line of fire against the rook. So bishop d6, pawn e3. So generally, when you are playing the English opening, the d3 or d pawn is a weak pawn, especially when the file is semi-open for the black. So you have to play pawn to d4 as soon as possible. So that's what I think he is trying to prepare with the e3 and then d4 later. Plays bishop f5, trying to attack the d3 weak point, and now again another prophylactic move, rook fd1, trying to overprotect that. So queen e6 forms the battery, and after that knight c4, he plays bishop s3, trying to remove the one of the key defenders from the king side. So after bishop h3, queen h3, he plays pawn to d4. After e takes d4, Nodirbek recaptures with the pawn. So in this position, if you are thinking about recapturing with the piece, that is actually okay to play, like bishop takes d4, but there is no what do you say, now the file is completely open actually. So now that means both players can compete for the same file. So but in the game, what happened, he plays e takes d4, keeping the d file as a semi-open file and the e file as an open file. And what is the point of this? The d pawn is taking control over the center actually, but Pragg does not have the center right now. So rook e8, pawn to d5, kicks the knight, and the knight goes back to e7. So in this position, if you're interested in playing e5, knight e5, then it's completely playable actually. After knight takes e5, but you don't take the knight again, because if you take, then after takes, then rook takes e5, then the rook is getting activated, and now the rook is is ready to go to the king side for a stronger attack on the king. And not only that, this is not only a strong pawn in the center. If you look at the pawn from the black's perspective, it's a kind of a weak pawn. Then black will be able to put pressure on this pawn and try to win it. If you take on c7, then we have rook h5, a very strong attack on the king side. So going back in this position, he played knight e7 instead of knight e5, but knight e5 was one of the options available. Knight takes d6 was played, c takes d6, and now we have some weaknesses for both sides to discuss, especially b7 and then the light squares on the king side. Since Pragg managed to exchange the light square bishop off the board, then all these holes, as you can see, these are the holes on the king side. But can he take advantage of that? Let's see. So c takes d6, that leave or that left black's d6 as well as the b7 as a weakness. So here Let's see how Nodirbek takes advantage of that or attacks. So he first puts the rook on the d4 square, a very interesting rook lift. He's adding more pressure to this pawn, so you need to protect it. So pawn b5 is basically forced. So queen d3 again adds more pressure, and in this position you need to defend this pawn actually by playing either you play rook a b8 or you just retreat the queen back to defend the pawn. But in the game, what happened? He played knight g6. It's basically a mistake or a blunder because uh, Pragg thinks that he can create a stronger kingside attack, considering some kind of tactical ideas, but he missed one move in this process that was found by Notherback. So he captures the free pawn first, and when he plays knight e5, the idea is very simple. He wants to go to the f3 square and attack on a h2, right? So how do we defend it? Basically, you have two moves to defend them. I mean, basically you have two moves to defend the threats. One is rook f4, another one is queen e2. Say for example, in this position, if you play rook f4, this is playable only, but this is not the best move. But Nodirbek found the best idea in the position, that is to play queen to e2, putting the queen against the rook, because there is only one square the knight can go and create a stronger attack, that is f3 square, but now that is covered by the queen itself. So if you go there, the queen is going to simply capture. If you play knight to g4, then rook is already covering g4. That means that's again a free piece for white. So that is why this queen e2 is a very strong move. I think that was missed by Pragg, and because of that, Pragg lost the pawn. So Pragg doesn't have a compensation for that to show. So queen f5 was played, knowing that there is nothing going to help him or work. So still, if you play something like knight g4 is not going to help him. So queen f5, trying to put the knight on the f3 square for a fork. So he played rook f4 to cover that. In case king g2, that is also playable, but rook f4 is a very straightforward move. It covers the threat, also creates the threat. So interesting move. Queen to d7 all the way back. So that was the move which he could have played, or he should have played earlier, like 5 to 10 moves ago. So that would have defended b4, and yeah, the position would have been a much better for Pragg. So rook f4 forms the battery, and now he's already creating a threat of capturing the knight and winning a pawn. So here there is only one way for Pragg to manage this position, maybe trying to get the position into a roughly equal manner. So that is to play pawn to f5. So what is the point of this move? It's actually a counter attacking move. So it's actually kicks the rook away. So you just drop the rook back, and then pawn to f4 again gains the time on the rook. What is the point of f4? Now you just covered e4, and again the moment the rook moved, you just left the control. What is the point? So if the rook comes back, the point is to play pawn to f3, create a long time problem on the king side. Say for example, once the queen drops to d1, and then queen to h3, and then you need to trade the queens off the board, and then you have a forcing sequence to liquidate the pieces. And this could be a game where I think it's holdable, maybe rook d1, knight c5, and then the game goes on. But what happened in the game, he played rook a c8, which allowed him to form the Alakane gun, and now the knight is under big problem. So rook e d8 was played and pinning the knight, and in the process he lost the second pawn. And after queen b7, rook d1, so queen b3, pawn d6, pushing the pass pawn. And then after queen trade, it's basically lost position. After pawn d7, in this position, after 36th move, Pragnananda simply resigned the games, because there is no defense against the threat of rook to e8. Say for example, if we capture this pawn, then rook e8 check is coming. Otherwise, if you want to defend the threat, then you play rook d1. So say for example, now the tactically the pawn is defended. If you take, then you are getting checkmated. So that's how. Otherwise, there is no retreat square for this other rook. Otherwise, you could defend e8. But the problem is there is no square. So that is why in this position, after d7, it's a reasonable position. So Pragnananda resigned the game, and Abdusattorov won the game. So with this win, actually, after the third round, he is the sole leader of the tournament with the 2.5 points. So I hope you like this quick review of this game. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up, and subscribe ChessWiser for more.